Hello YouTube! This is Ryan with Ryan's Cosplay Closet, also known as The Real Malky. Welcome back to my lab. Today we are going to work on this long knife. Now, you may recognize this from my previous video. That's because it's the same one. Now, just for a little explanation, there are 6 coats of rapid fill on this blade and 4 coats on this handle. You ask, why the difference? Why not just do the same amount? That is because I'm going to wet sand the blade and just regularly sand the handle. Again, why the difference? Well, because wet sanding produces an incredibly smooth finish, which is what you want for metal. Well, at least what I want for metal. You might want something different. And normal sanding produces a normally regular old smooth finish, like you would want for wood or stone or something like that. This is going to look like it's made out of wood. You can already see the wood grain paneling and all that stuff. Now, when I wet sand, I like to wear gloves because this stuff will pick up any fingerprints or anything like that. So, you want to be careful. And I usually start with 400, and we're going to go up to 600, 800, 1,000, and maybe up to 1,500. But you don't need to see all that because it's all going to look very similar. You also want to wear a dust mask when doing this. So, there's that. And now, let's get started. So, here we go. Now, I just kind of figured this out as I went along because I couldn't find many tutorials on wet sanding. So, if I'm doing this wrong, please tell me in the comments. But basically, we are just going to get our sandpaper a little bit damp and sand. And that residue coming up is actually the fine finish being smoothed out. Then you dry it off with a paper towel. Well, at least I do. And that is what it looks like after wet sanding. Keep in mind, this is just 400 grit. Yeah. I'm going to do the entire blade just like that. Make sure to get all the surfaces, the edges, because you want a nice uniform finish. Dry it off. And that's how I wet sand. Again, I couldn't find any tutorials on this, so if I'm doing it wrong, let me know in the comments. Okay, I'm just going to keep doing this for a while, all the way up through 1500 grit, but you don't need to see that. It's all the same. So, I will see you when it's done. Okay, so all the sanding is done. Now, I started with 400 grit sandpaper, moved up to 600 grit, and 800 grit and 1000 grit sandpaper. Now, something I failed to mention before I started sanding is you want to be very careful when you are wet sanding, because it is super easy to just sand all the way through all layers of everything, like I did right here, and here, and here, here, and here. But a little bit of rapid fill showing through is not going to be an issue. So be aware of that. I also sanded the handle. But this one is just 400, 600, and 800 grit sandpaper. And now that all that's done, it is time to put on our base coat of paint. Follow me. Not that one. This one. We are going to be using Krylon Color Max Gloss Black paint, specifically for the base coat of the blade. Now, whenever you are doing metallic paints, you want to have a nice dark base coat. Also, the amount of shine you're going to get will come from your base coat. So if you want a matte finish, you want to start with a matte black. I want gloss, so we start with gloss. And now, outside. Again, you want to shake up your paint really well for at least 2 minutes. I have already started shaking this before the video started, so we're just going to go. And again, actually, I'd rather if you come over. Again, you don't want to start by spraying directly on your piece. No, because that will give you a big glob of spray paint. You don't want that. You want a nice, even coat. So, what I found works best is start beside your piece. And then slowly move the spray paint across your piece. Like so. Try to avoid getting paint in your eyes, because that's no fun. You okay there?
So.
And now, going to clean out the nozzle a little bit. And then we're going to set this aside and let it dry. And then we're going to do another coat, and probably another coat. And then we'll spray paint the handle too, but that'll be brown since it's going to look like it's made of wood. But you don't need to see that. because that's just more of the same. So, this paint dries in 20 minutes, handle in 1 hour, apply additional coats within 2 hours or after 48 hours. Like I said in the last video, every single kind of paint dries differently. Different dry times, different tackiness, all kinds of stuff. So, be aware of that. Again, we want to elevate the blade so that it's not touching anything. And then we just wait for it to dry. I'm going to put on another coat in an hour, and then another coat, and another coat, and so on and so on. And we will be back for the next part in about 4 hours. So, I will see you then. Okay, so it's been a couple hours. All of our paint has dried. You will notice the handle is now brown. I'm not going to stop here. Also, this piece of paper is a masking trick I learned from Bill Duran from Punished Props. It is an easy way to mask off a whole lot of area without actually having a whole lot of masking tape on that area. Now, we're going to do some detail brushing. Now, if you go outside and look at trees and stuff like that, trees are rarely ever one color. That's what we're going to do here. You're going to add some highlights, some lowlights, and all kinds of awesome stuff. We're going to do that by dry brushing, which is the concept I went over in the previous video. Basically, what we're going to do is get a little bit of paint, and let's start with rich brown paint. This is just acrylic paint. Anita's. I got it at Hobby Lobby. This is also acrylic paint. So is this. And we are going to, dip the brush in the paint. Wipe most of it away. And then add a little bit of contrast. Not trying to cover the whole handle here, just adding some highlights. And it's okay if it doesn't look perfect, because it's not really supposed to. It's supposed to look natural. And we're going to switch to the warm brown. Dip in the brush. Adding just a hint of contrast. To the handle. And this method can be kind of subtle, so you'll want to do multiple passes and just build up the color as you like. Just kind of be a little haphazard with it. And have fun with it. There's a reason it is called cosplay. Have fun, experiment. Sometimes you'll hear trust the process. I say try to enjoy the process, because most of the time if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're going to be better at it. Take your time. And again, not trying to cover everything, just adding a bit of contrast to make it look more realistic. Now, we're going to switch to, what is this? Yeah, raw sienna. And a couple highlights. You don't have to cover everything. In fact, I am not covering everything. Yeah, as you can see there, with all that extra color, as opposed to there with none of the extra color. And then we're just gonna do that again on the other side. I may have carved some of the grooves a little bit deeper on this side because, again, it's not all going to be the same depth. Nature is rarely ever uniform. So keep that in mind when you are painting your prop. Knife, sword, shield, whatever. Armor. And if you accidentally get a little bit too much paint somewhere, you can always move it around, thin it out, paint over it, and yeah. Okay, now that there's been some dry brushing, some interesting stuff going on in the handle here, we're going to do what I call a gold wash. I want all these little crevices to have some gold in them. Now, to do that, I have mixed up some gold paint and some water. This is just metallic acrylic gold paint, nothing special. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the black wash, except with gold paint. Now, I have heard that we're not supposed to thin metallic paints with water. I figure let's give it a shot and see what happens. Because this could be fun. So here we go. Now, just like with the black wash, I smeared it on. Now I'm going to wipe most of it away. Leaving, oh, thank you. Ah, yes. Leaving that. And then we're gonna do it again. Smear it on. And wipe it off. And yes, I'm aware some of the brown highlights got kind of lost in this. So I will just go back and add them again. That is the beautiful thing about painting. If you don't like the way something looks, you can just paint over it. I like how this looks. I think it looks pretty cool. In fact, I might even make this the thumbnail for the video. Now we're going to do the other side. And yeah, that is it for this part. So I'm going to paint the handle next, but that's... Actually, I might use the airbrush for that. I don't know. We'll find out. Okay, so it's been a couple hours. All our paint has dried. Our detail paint has dried, which is right here, but you can't see it because it's all masked off. Now, there has been a slight change of plans. I was going to use my airbrush to paint the blade, but instead, I'm going to be going with this, the Rust-Oleum spray paint. This is dark steel. It's pretty much similar to all other spray paints. But the important thing here is sometimes plans will have to change. Sometimes you may run out of your airbrush paint, your airbrush compressor might break down, and you don't have time to go out and get another one. So, be ready to adjust your plans. That being said, let's go outside and paint this thing. Now, we are also not going to be putting a heavy coat of spray paint on this. This is going to be a light dusting coat. Very light. So it's probably not going to cover the entire, probably not going to cover all the blade well. What we want here is a nice metallic sheen. So, here we go. Like that. It's okay if it's a little uneven in some places, because what we're going to do after this dries is dry brushing. Yes, more dry brushing. So, we will wait for this to dry and then we will get back on the dry brushing. Okay, so about an hour has passed and our mist coat is dry. But before we get into adding all the extra highlights and dry brushing and details and all that awesomeness, I want to talk about quite possibly the most satisfying thing for a prop maker. Removing masking tape. Now, it is tempting to just rip this stuff off like a Band-Aid, but don't do that. What you want to do when you're removing masking tape is peel it away like so. And again, don't rip up. Pull the masking tape along your prop like this. And then get rid of it. By the way, I got this technique from Evil Ted. The man is a genius. So, now that that's done, it is time for some more dry brushing. Yes. We're going to start with obsidian. And when I poured this into this cup here, it was a little bit too dark for me, so I mixed in some silver. That gave us this. And then we will move on to pewter, maybe, I don't know. Still kind of undecided about this one. And then, just regular old silver. But, before we get to those, let's start with obsidian. Or obsilverine. A little bit of paint. Wipe it off. and do. Now, I am aware this might not show up well on camera because I can barely see it myself. But this layer is more about subtlety. You're just drawing attention to certain parts and adding a little bit of not really stark contrast to your piece. Also, you will notice that these colors are vastly different. That is because, like wood and stone, metal is usually not just one color. There are multiple. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the pewter. See how this looks. Yeah, there we go. It's showing up a little bit better. Again, not covering everything, just drawing attention to highlights, adding contrast, and slowly building up layers. And just for the sake of recording, I'm going to do one more pass with this and then move on to the silver. And I'm probably going to do multiple passes, multiple coats of this, just because it is, well, one pass is not exactly easy to see. But my cameraman is looking pretty bored. So we're going to speed things along. And if you ever get a glob like this, a little bit too much in one spot, you can always spread it out, paint over it, or if you want, you could wipe it away. Because accidents happen. Things get messed up. It's just part of the process. But there. You see this side of the blade has been dry brushed with silver, pewter, and an obsidian and silver mixture. This side has not. Note the subtle differences. Dry brushed, not dry brushed. And I'm just going to keep doing this for about 20, maybe 10, 20 minutes. I don't know. But that's more of the same. You don't need to see that. So, I will say thank you very much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share if you want. And I will see you in the next one. Have a nice day. Or what's left of it.